Hey everyone, this is Knight, and today I'm bringing you an updated Stoeirhaja deck list for set 6. So starting off, of course, as we always do, the viability in the meta. This deck is very much another Stoeirhaja glass cannon deck. It is very much aggressive, and there are definitely some stun aspects. This deck is probably going to get a little bit better once we get set 8, because there is a card in there that makes this deck absolutely bonkers from what I've heard. But, you know, I obviously have to test it for myself. But as the deck is now, it's interesting. It's definitely a unique-ish deck. But you're probably not going, you might steal a couple of games with it because like a lot of people aren't going to know what it does. And the deck is so aggressive, people can get overwhelmed very quickly. But aside from that, the deck is pretty fun to play, and I've found a lot of really interesting tech options to play in this deck. So let's go ahead and hop straight into it. All right, so as always, of course, starting off with the ride line, we are of course going to be just playing the classic Stoeirhaja ride line here. Very important. This has to be your starter because his name is Banana, and that is very superior to any other Stoeirhaja starter, especially for this deck. But anyways, get into the actual cards. When this unit is rode upon by the grade 2, you check the top 7 cards of your deck and you either add a Persona Ride or a Codex from among them, which is a little unfortunate that it is like possible to whiff off this and get nothing. But you know, it is what it is. He does actually have another skill, which is at the end of the battle, or at the end of the turn, if you played a Codex, you can actually retire him to add a Persona Ride from your drop to your hand. It is theoretically possible to get this guy out, and you know, you could loop Persona Ride, but most of the time you're probably not going to be doing that. So it's just kind of there if it comes up. Just remember that it has that skill. But the grade 2, when he is ridden by Stoeirhaja himself, Soul Blast 1, and you just search for a Codex. Use your typically by turn 3 you will have at least one Codex in your hand, just given this and like the amount that we play, and maybe just bad luck, you tend to draw into a lot of Codexes. So you just search for typically the one that you don't have. And his other effect, which is actually relevant, which is when he's placed on rear, if you played a Codex this turn, you Soul Charge 1, and he does get 5k. So in the very early game, typically if you're going first, you tend to call this guy off because you don't really have your drop zone really set up at that point, and he tends to be a pretty decent attacker. What you really want to do in this deck is scale in increments of 5 from 10. So him being a 15k attacker base is actually very much effective in this deck. So getting to Stoeirhaja itself, during your turn, if your opponent is on grade 3 and you played at least a Codex card this turn, all your front row units get plus 5k. So yet another increment of 5k scaling. The only issue with it is he scales into 18, which is like not really that great of a number. I mean, it hits a decent number, but the fact that he's going to be attacking to a 10k Vanguard most of the time is like, it's a little neg. Like, it's not like the greatest. You definitely want something better. But of course, the main skill is that when you play a normal order, if your opponent is on grade 3, unfortunately, you can play additional order, but you can only play Codexes. So the main gimmick of the deck is to play 2 orders in a single turn, and then use that to chain with his last skill, which is when he attacks CB1, you choose one of your regards for each time you played a Codex order and stand it. So now that is the one skill that is not restricted to your opponent beyond grade 3. So theoretically, on your first turn, you can go for 4 attacks, which sometimes you do because this deck is pretty aggressive, but you do have to make sure that you're keeping track of how much CB you have, how much you're using, and how much you're going to be taking, because we don't really have access to very much ways to get our resources back. Alright, so moving on into the main deck. Of course, we are going to be playing 3 copies of Persona Ride. Persona Ride is another way to scale in increments of 10, and if you Persona Ride on your kill turn, it is very much more likely to actually like finish off your opponent. But of course, I think that's the only grade 3 we're actually playing normal unit, because we have so much non-shield in this deck. I really don't want to commit to like putting even more, and in any case, like I said, you want to scale in increments of 5 and 10, so having grade 2s is just better anyway. But of course, we're going to go ahead and hop into the Codexes, which are grade 3 normal orders. Of course, we're going to be starting off with the Principles of Non-Self. So you can only play it while you're on Stoeirhaja, and if you didn't play an order with the same card. So you can't stack 2 orders on top of each each other. They has to be different ones. But this is the one you play first. So you choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop, call it to rearguard, and then it gets 5k. But if your opponent is on grade 3, it also gets the skill that when it restands by a card ability, you get to draw, or you get to draw a card. You get to give it a crit. That's the other card. But basically, another card that just adds pressure, lets you reborn your things, and it gives another 5k, which is going to, you know, make your numbers hit for that much harder. So like if you were born the grade 1 off of this skill, it becomes a 20k, which is a really good magic number, specifically in this deck, regardless of where you are in the game. Because the other codex order that we only have 2 right now, is the Principles of Unsatisfactoriness. We were playing 3/3. I don't know if I mentioned that. But of course, same condition. You can't play one with the same name, and you have to be on grade 3 Stoeirhaja. So this is the one you play second, because until end of turn, your opponent, not your opponent's vanguard, gets that all of their vanguards will always get minus 3k. So that puts them at 10k base most of the time, which is why it's good to scale in increments of 5 and 10, because you're going to be bashing in at a 10k base vanguard every single time, assuming you play this. Then it does have another skill, which is you Soul Blast 2. If you played another codex, this is why this has to be a second one. Soul Blast 2, draw a card, and then you give your opponent the skill that all their vanguards get -1 drive. So a little bit of a defensive, a little bit of stun there. Basically the main gimmick for playing this deck, you kind of just like interfere with your opponent and bash their face in when they can't do anything. So effectively what this card does is it turns their vanguard back into grade 2. So yeah, this is just what we're doing. You honestly just like end up having too many codexes, so a lot of times you can just pitch them, especially since you can't use them until turn 3. And of course we do have ways to get them back, so it's not the end of the world if they end up getting into the drop zone. And then, of course, we are playing for our Regalius piece, our last grade 3. We're going to be playing a Fire Regalius, which, of course, is you just remove it from the drop zone or the hand, and then check top 5, call one thing. Just a little bit of a consistency booster. The fact that we are a very order-reliant deck means that it's hard to play any other, like, Regulus piece if you really would want to. The only other options are like Twin Cast realistically, but I do like this for being like, you know, good pitch fodder. It's good to ditch when you ride up, and you know, it helps you find some really good pieces that you need in order to actually kill your opponent. Right, so moving on into the grade 2s, we are going to be starting off with our most important grade 2, the Flyover, what's his name? Virakta. So he is, when placed on rear, CB1, check top 7 for a codex. If you whiff, you do actually get to draw cards. You don't actually get a refund on that, but you know, you at least get a draw for your compensation. But the main skill that we do use for him is this unit gets 5k for each time you played a codex order, making him, if you play both codexes, a 20k base. Which, you know, swinging into a 15k Vanguard is going to be calling for, you know, not 15k, a 10k Vanguard is calling for a 15k shield by himself, unboosted, which doesn't even account to any of the other power bonuses we get. If we give him extra power, if we give him a booster, everything that's scaling in increments of 10 makes that extra shield value that they need to waste on his attacks just that much more. All right, so moving on, we're actually going to be playing 4 copies of Valtrossa. So Valtrossa has always been really good in Stoeirhaja. I don't think I've ever actually used her in any of my deck profiles, but when she's placed on rear from hand, except during the battle phase, you check top card of your deck, you may discard it, and then you counterblast 1 and perform one of the following. You either choose a normal order from your drop, put it to your hand, or you choose a grade 2 or greater card from your drop and you call it to rearguard circle. So she obviously pulls double duty in the sense that at one turn, if you use both your orders and you happen to live and get to your next turn, you might be kind of shit out of luck if you are missing one of them. So Valtrossa is there as an additional copy to get it back. Alternatively, if you have both orders already and you just need to get back another attacker, you can always just get back this or any of the other. It's basically just this, honestly. She can reborn this, a copy of herself, or a Persona Ride, because these are the only grade 2s we're actually playing in this deck. But most of the time you're using her to get back the order that you are missing. And then of course, being grade 2, she scales in 10, which is, you know, obviously you would prefer this or your Ride Line grade 2 to be your main attacker, but she will always do in a pinch. All right, so continuing on with our theme of actually getting our orders back, we are going to be playing 4 copies of the Alvina. Of course, Alvina is when she's placed on rear from hand, EB3. Choose either, let me go ahead and focus, this, either an order card without Regalia's piece added to your hand, or reborn a grade 1 or less from your drop. So there are theoretically grade 1s that you could revive off of this. But mainly, once again, just like with Valtrossa, you're usually just using her to get your orders back, because, like I said, you need to have both of them, otherwise your plays are a little bit hampered. So she is just there to do that, basically. Oh, and one more thing about Alvina, I did forget, she does actually have another skill, which is as long as you have 4 more units, she gets plus 2k, making her 10k booster, which, like I said, that scales in increments of 10, making a 20k column. If you put her behind a Valtrossa, is going to be attacking into a 10k Vanguard that's calling for a 15k shield, which is also very good. So continuing on, we're going to be talking about a new card that was just released in set 6. This is Effectless Puracenis, okay? But when the unit in front of him, same column, restands by the ability of your grade 3 Vanguard with Stoeirhaja, you slide him into the soul, draw a card, and choose one of your units. It gets 5k. So this card is okay. Of the 3 Stoeirhaja cards that were actually released in the latest booster set, well, I guess it's not latest anymore, but set 6, this is the only one that I think is really worth playing. There's one that like gains power, and then there's one that lets you like discard to get a Codex from drop, I think. But this guy is actually very good because previously you did have a couple of soul issues in this deck because like your order costs 2 soul there. But like this guy does definitely make it so that you don't really ever run into that issue. And he is effectively a little bit of a restanding booster, just because like he boosts the first attack. Unfortunately, he doesn't get like 2k, so like you're swinging for 28 maybe, which doesn't really scale very well into like a 10k base. But you know, he at least gives the extra 5k to the thing in front of him usually, just so it can hit for 15, which is still going to call for like a 10k guard, assuming it's like a Valtrossa, I suppose. And then, you know, the extra draw is always just very nice, being able to replace your units. All right, so this is the actual spicy tech. This is going to be a card you probably haven't seen. This is to may do, to may don't. He has a single skill, which is, of course, act once per... No, it's not even a once per turn, but it doesn't matter because you EB2 and rest him, choose one of your units, and it gets plus 10k until end of turn. So what this card is effectively in this deck is a restanding 10k booster. Because what we will do is you put him behind Vanguard, and then you give the extra 10k to either Valtrossa or your flyover, and now they're hitting for either 20 or 30 against a 10k base Vanguard. And that's, of course, not only just hitting the first time, but when they restand off Stoeirhaja's skill, they're going to be using that 10k once again to attack your opponent. So putting him behind the Vanguard is usually what you're going to be doing. He's also rebornable off of Alvina, although the energy does get a little bit awkward because he is using 2 energy and Alvina is using 3. So usually you'll have enough energy, but you'll end up with like 1 left over most of the time. But yeah, he's just like really good in this deck. All right, so a little bit more spice here. I'm actually going to be playing the draw blitz order, which is interesting. So if your opponent has a face-up card in their G zone, you can actually play this card without the cost. But otherwise, you do just discard 1 card, and then you choose one of your units that's being attacked. It gets plus 10k until the end of battle. You choose up to 4 draw turns without Sentinel and call them to rearguard. So most of the time, this is going to be at least like a 40k shield. Depending on what you call from the drop zone. Obviously, we have effect draws that are, you know, we prefer to be calling. But this is just like basically another PG, because like the amount of shield you get off this kind of just can blank almost any attack single-handedly, which is something we definitely need in this deck because you do not want to be guarding with your pieces. So being able to like finish off a guard without having to commit like any extra cards from hand is just very much beneficial. If you don't want to play this, I definitely understand. I'd probably just bump up the copies of To May Don't to take this out. But you know, from the games that I play with this card has actually been doing some work. Right, so just getting the basics out of the way, we are going to be playing 4 PGs. I'm not playing Elementaria currently. Typically, if I have a deck that uses a blitz order, I tend to like keep Elementaria out of it, just because, you know, I don't want to conflict. Like, it does come up, but like if you want to play Elementaria in this deck, like it probably won't matter, especially if you like end up cutting this guy. Okay, then of course our trigger lineup is actually going to be a little bit different than usual. We're going to be playing 5 crits here. We're going to be playing 4 effect draws, And then we are actually going to be playing 2 more extra vanilla draws just to enable our blitz order, of course. And do take note that this is objectively the correct draw trigger that you should be playing 100% of the time if you're ever playing vanilla draws. And then, of course, our basic things. We've got the heals, and then, of course, overtrigger. The one thing I will say about the heals, I have considered playing maybe counter grade heals, just because this is a deck that can really blind second if you really want to, since everything is locked behind your opponent beyond grade 3. And counter grade heals can sometimes be useful. But, you do have to take that into consideration. That's, once again, as I always say, just like building preference. And then of course Blessed Flavor is just like, the best OT whenever you're playing any Stoeirhaja deck. Right, so that's gonna do it for my Stoeirhaja deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. A little bit of a quick one here. Just kind of wanted to get this one out because we are already in set 7 meta and I have some more things to test from that set. But I will see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to do those 2 things, like, comment, subscribe.